don't know what to do anymore. I'm so scared and I can't trust anyone. I went camping about 3 weekends ago in the Huntsville National Forest in Texas. Me and 3 friends that came home for the weekend. They're all in college and usually we all get together at least once a year, old friends from high school. For the camping trip, we plan to go backpacking deep in the forest, live off of fish we catch and animals that we can trap. We've been doing this for a while in Texas and in numerous places, Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, so we're pretty much used to anything you'd encounter out there. It was my turn to pick where we went camping, so I chose Huntsville. More accurately, it's Huntsville, New Waverly. So, we drive up there, park our car in a camping park spot, and start walking off into the forest. We had some laughs along the way, everyone catching up with each other's lives. We walked until it started to get dark, and set up camp when we stopped. Everyone gathered wood to make a fire, and we set our tent up. And we do what we always do, try and scare each other with weird stories. Around this time we started to smell something, very faint. It was noticeable, but not overbearing or anything. We couldn't put our finger on what it was, so we just carried on. Mike had to go piss, and he walked off into the forest a little bit. A second later, he came running back, piss all down his jeans like he'd missed really bad or something. Immediately, we all cracked up and threw some jokes at him, but we noticed he was white as snow and trying to catch his breath. He starts screaming at us to follow him and runs off. We all get really serious and go follow him, not knowing what the problem was. We start to hear a faint scream and crying in the distance, in the direction we were running. It was pitch black, away from the camp, and Mike had the only flashlight. We left ours at the camp. He had his from his trip taking a piss, so at this stage, we didn't have much choice but to follow the light, which was frantically pointing here and there in front of him. The scream gets closer, and Mike starts to slow down. We then notice a ratty old cabin that looked like it was abandoned except for a faint light that we could see from one of the old mildew-covered windows. The crying was intense. Whoever it was couldn't breathe enough to let out a full yell. We all followed Mike up to the front door, and we could all hear the crying from inside. As soon as he knocked on the door, the crying stopped. We all waited, not really sure what for, and soon heard really heavy footsteps walking fast to the door. There was a giant slam against the door, and the sound of a bolt unlocking. Then, nothing. We waited for a bit, knocked a few more times, but still nothing happened. We walked around the house. There was no fucking way any of us were leaving each other's side, and noticed a window, which was a good way up. Alex took a deep breath and said, "Boost me up there. I want to look inside." Me and Mike reluctantly lifted him up to the window. We watched him brush away dirt and webs from the window, and place his face close to try and see something. There was a quick beat, then suddenly he breathed in fast and let out a loud scream. He fell back from the window, screaming bloody murder the whole way. We all tried to calm him down, but he was hysterical. We went to him, but he started to shake, punch, kick, you name it, then took off back towards our camp. None of us wanted to be separated, so we all ran close behind him. We caught up to him, grabbed him, and set him down. The fire was dying out, so I grabbed some nearby wood that we collected and added it. My hands were shaking, and I had to do something. I went back to Alex, and we all tried to calm him down, but he wouldn't. He just kept screaming, and he was breathing so hard that he eventually fainted. And now, by this point, all of us are terrified. We kept the fire high until sunrise. Periodically, Alex kept waking up, screaming just like before. By sunrise, he was up. He looked catatonic, just mumbling to himself and whispering. Me and Mike decided to go look at the cabin now that it was daylight. We searched where we thought it was, except there was nothing there. Nothing at all. The indistinct smell from last night had now grown into a very strong smell of something dead. Something stale. We headed back to the camping site. When we got there, we found Alex had chewed into the sides of his face and swallowed so much blood that he was throwing up. John was at his back. He looked like he was about to die from exhaustion. I guess we all looked that way, I just didn't notice until I saw his face. Alex said quietly, "Guys, we need to leave. Now." We all started to pack up the tent. It started to rain really heavily, and the sky seemed to grow really dark. Alex started to go into a panic. He went and grabbed a big stick and yelled at us to leave it. leave it all, now, or he'd knock us out and drag us out of there himself. Mike started to yell at him, and they started to fight. We broke it up, finished packing, and started to make our way back. After a little while, we arrived at a creek we had crossed the previous day, only now it was flooded over, and the water was moving too fast for us to cross it. Alex started to scream again, yelling at Mike for taking his time and packing up the tent when we could have gotten out of here. This went on for a while until we finally convinced Alex to calm down and tell us what the fuck happened at the cabin. He sighed and said, as soon as he put his face to the glass, a face on the other side did the same thing and started to smile really big. He had dark eyes, a dark mouth, which was much bigger than Alex's, as the smile got as large as it could. A giant shadow behind it swung something down and sliced its face off. The face was stuck to the window, and he said it started to laugh quietly and evilly as it slid down. Mike, still pissed off, and though he wouldn't admit it, beginning to get freaked out, started to argue with him again, calling it bullshit. We eventually started to follow the creek for a way to cross. We started to see toys floating in the creek. Really old toys, old Barbie dolls, and baby dolls. This wasn't like any old trash floating in the creek, though. This was a lot of Barbies, a lot of baby dolls. One washed towards the side, and Mike picked it up. It had some kind of voice chip that was dying, and started to say some gurgling words we couldn't understand, followed by its sad excuse for laughter. Then it sounded like it was whispering. We thought the batteries must be dying, so he threw it back down. We kept going. The sun was starting to set. Alex was freaking out more now, and he was whimpering and breathing heavily. We all started to see shadows move behind trees, something we all called BS on until we were all seeing it. It was barely light out, and we stop as we see the cabin right in front of us somehow. None of us knows what to think. Mike says, "This is bullshit. I'm going in there." Alex tries to stop him. We all do. All of us just wanted to go home. Mike says to all of us to fuck off, do our own thing. He doesn't care anymore. This is all bull. We start to hear hundreds of the same sort of baby dolls as before, laughing, whispering, and trying to sing. We start to move forward past the cabin, all of us, and kept pushing forward. We smelled something dead in the air, something stale. The same something as before. We started to hear something crying and screaming. We kept on going. We finally found a way to cross the creek, and we left the woods because of it. We get back to our vehicle and got in. It's pitch black by this point, and we drive. We're about to get on the 45 to Houston, but the road is under construction and can't be crossed. It points to a detour. As we head towards the detour, it seems to be small, bumpy, a dirt road going into the woods. We see a young girl come up to us. She looks like she was in trouble, young and pretty. She approaches the passenger side door, and she looks like she's really drugged up or beaten or something. Alex doesn't roll down the windows, nor does he open the door. She reaches for the handle, and he immediately locks it. She puts her face on the window, and starts to smile really big. We floor it. Alex starts to cry and scream. We're all breathing heavy. We finally cut on a street that takes us to the 45, and we take it the whole way. When we get back to my apartment, everyone doesn't know what to say. We all break apart and go our separate ways. Mike messages me later and says he's going to go back. I try to convince him not to, and all he does is say it was in our heads, that it was all just screwing with us. I think he just wanted to prove himself. He wasn't scared. I could smell that stench everywhere now. I don't go out anymore. I stay in and I don't answer the door. Last week everyone I met was acting really strange. People that I've known for my whole life, and even total strangers. My own dad, when I went to his place to eat supper with him, he just watched me strangely when I was sitting down. He didn't say a word the whole time after I'd come inside the house. I kept asking him what's wrong, and he just slowly shook his head. No. When I was leaving to go home, I turned to wave. I noticed he had black eyes and an open mouth like he was in pain. When I started to walk back, he shut the door and bolted it. I stayed there, knocking and knocking. Nothing. I called him, His phone was disconnected. I even called the police. Halfway through the questions they were asking me, the connection started to fade into static. But I could hear a faint mumbling, singing, and laughing. Mike has completely vanished. There's no record of him even being alive. When I call Alex's house, they talk to me like I'm some salesman. They say they don't know any Alex and to please stop calling. The person who tells me that is Alex's mother. I can't get a hold of John. Someone knocked on my door, and when I went to look, I saw a face completely covering the peephole, and a giant smile started to form. I called the cops again, and instead of it turning into static, they just got really strange.
Sir, are you affected by any drugs at the moment?
No.
Are you coming home anytime soon?
Excuse me?
Come home.
And then they ended the call. My mail slot swings every now and then. Someone is sliding pieces of baby dolls through it. I throw them away, and I burn the trash whenever I can. I try to call people now, and all I can hear is static, and bad baby doll noises, and this crying and screaming. I busted my TV set, but when I go to piss, I can hear it on. I might be going insane. Whoever lives above me started to scream in pain, and is crying deeply recently. I hear bangs and something falling to the ground. From the neighbors to the right of my apartment, I hear what sounds like a baby that never gets tended to. And then it sounds like one of those baby dolls we found, whose batteries are dying. My phone's been ringing now, and it's Alex, telling me things in a language I've never heard before, nor could even manage to repeat. I keep getting emails of pictures of black and small colorations, and now I can't even access my email. My computer's the only thing working in my apartment anymore. Someone knocks on the door, and they slam against it. I hear the bolts unlocking one by one. I run to make sure to lock all of them back, and sit down crying. What do I do? My electricity keeps dimming. My water, sinks, bath, shower, all smell like something dead. I keep seeing a shadow of someone behind me raising something up in the air, and I just take off to the other side of the apartment with my head against the wall. I boarded all my windows shut. Someone was throwing rocks through them. Despite having a clear view, I could never see who. I boarded my bedroom in. I hear crying and screaming in there now. And right now, while I'm typing this out, I can see the reflection off the computer screen of some shadow behind me.